Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. India reveals new measures against Pakistan a day after 26 people were killed in a deadly attack in the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Steps include closing the main border, suspending a key water treaty and expelling Pakistani diplomats. US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky clash once again over ending the war as Trump slams Kiev's refusal to accept Russia's hold on Crimea. US Vice President J.D. Vance warns that if both sides don't agree a deal soon, Washington may quit its role as mediator. At least 2 people are killed and over 50 are wounded in a Russian missile strike on Kyiv, according to the city's mayor. The attack on the Ukrainian capital left 38 people hospitalized, which authorities warning of possible further strikes. After January clashes involving M23 rebels, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda vow to pursue peace. A deal signed in Doha offers a rare sign of hope that the long-running conflict could see a turn towards calm. Trump's cabinet is expected to curb the power of the Department of Government Efficiency and reclaim control over budgets and staffing as Elon Musk prepares to step back. Musk announced on Tuesday that he'll be reducing his role to focus more on his core businesses. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Iran must not enrich uranium under any deal with Washington, even as talks continue. Iran, however, has insisted that zero enrichment is unacceptable, making compromise hard to reach. Suspected jihadist insurgents killed 54 soldiers in an attack on military posts in Benin National Park last week. This marks the deadliest assault the West African country has seen since the northbound attacks began. A New York jury heard opening statements in the retrial of disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. The Miramax co-founder faces charges of sexual abuse and harassment against 3 women, allegedly using his power to exploit them. Our top story today, a day after the deadly terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir's Falagam claimed the lives of 26 tourists, India has taken strong diplomatic action. On Wednesday, India summoned Pakistan's chargé d'affaires in New Delhi and handed over a note declaring Pakistan's military diplomats as persona non grata. This comes in response to the deadly attack at Baisiran, one of the deadliest in the valley since the Pulwara strike in 2019. The attack has prompted India to announce a series of severe measures against Pakistan. India has also decided to suspend the Indus Water Treaty, which governs the sharing of the River Indus waters between the 2 nations. Additionally, Pakistan nationals will no longer be allowed to travel to India under the SAARC visa exemption scheme. The measures follow a cabinet committee on security meeting chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who condemned the attack and vowed swift action. Let's take a listen in to what the Foreign Secretary of India had to say.
Reviewed the overall security situation and directed all forces to maintain high vigil. It resolved that the perpetrators of this attack will be brought to justice and their sponsors held to account. India will be unrelenting in the pursuit of those who have committed acts of terror or conspired to make them possible. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney took to X to condemn the heinous act. Indian Defence Minister has also reacted sharply, saying the following.
टेररिज्म के खिलाफ हमारी जीरो टॉलरेंस की पॉलिसी है। भारत का एक एक नागरिक इस कायरतापूर्ण हरकत के खिलाफ एकजुट है। मैं इस मंच से देशवासियों को आश्वस्त करता हूं घटना के मद्देनजर भारत सरकार वो हर कदम उठाएगी जो जरूरी और उपयुक्त होगा.
Funeral processes continue as the nation mourns the loss of the lives of innocent civilians. We are joined by Brian Thomas, correspondent for NewsX in the Sangam Valley of Jammu and Kashmir. Brian, thank you very much for joining us. And what updates have you got? We are joined by Brian Thomas, our correspondent.
Well, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian. What updates have you got for us?
Definitely, there was a very high-level meeting also that was chaired by the Prime Minister himself. There was Defense Minister, and also very importantly, there was the Home Minister itself. They even came out with 5 major key aspects that they would want to implement it as well. Where they said that the Pakistani nationals who have the SAARC visas should be it's completely null and void now, and one should return. The Pakistani nationals who are there should return to back to their hometowns in 48 hours. The the Pakistan High Commission have also been nullified itself. The Indus Valley Water Treaty has also been suspended. So yes, these some major key decisions were taken after the major incident that broke out. An all-party meeting will also be happening. That is being chaired by the Prime Minister itself at his residence, that is the local Mark, also to address the situation and assess the situation. While yes, we are also on our way to Kulwam also, where a gunfight broke out between security forces and the terror group. So we are en route to that, but definitely India has become very strong in its stance, and as a result of that, also Pakistan is shaken, and they have also convened a high-level meeting that they would be taking place today in a while now. Yes.
Thank you very much, Brian, for joining us there from Jammu and Kashmir. We are joined by a guest, Brigadier Rajan Jamwal, defence expert located in Jammu, India. Thank you very much for joining us. Brigadier Jamwal, India has closed its main border crossing along with expelling diplomats and suspending this water treaty. I'll move on to Pakistan's response to this attack after this, but do you think this is a necessary and appropriate response from the Indian government?
You see, we have launched some diplomatic and economic offensive against Pakistan yesterday. The military offensive is yet to come. And we made a stand very clear. We aren't only getting after the foot soldiers, we are getting after the leadership, wherever they are. We are getting after them and we'll get them. Wherever they are hiding, whosoever is hiding them, everybody will be spotted and neutralized. So that has been our official response. The Defense Minister personally has said that. The yesterday's response, it was mostly diplomatic and economic. The water treaty abrogation, it will certainly hurt them. It will hurt them economically, and it was long overdue. We have no business feeding water to people who are trying to feed us blood. And to that extent, even the diplomatic, there's no business having diplomatic relations with people who don't understand diplomacy, whose only language they understand is violence, because they have been perpetuating this violence not only in Kashmir, but all over India through that policy of 1,000 cuts. And it's time we pay them back in the same coin. And it's happening already. The government, it is full of resolve. I mean, the whole nation is behind them. This is the time. There is anguish in the whole nation. So whatever options, hard options, and I'm sure they are coming in near future. Near future, they're coming. I expect the line of control to be totally activated just in a few days, and you will see going up the escalation ladder. We'll see where do they stop. I mean, Pakistan has no money left actually to fight a war. They are trying to distract the attention from their own problems in Balochistan and Northwest Frontier Province to get this thing. And so they basically arranged this, not only arranged, they got this dastardly act done in Pahalgam, basically to divert attention of their people from their internal problems.
Yes.
The Pakistan army is taking a big hit.
Yes, Brigadier Jamwal. Pakistan has obviously denied involvement in this attack and will convene a national security meeting to discuss the response to India's actions. They've obviously offered their condolences for the attack. Was this enough from Pakistan?
You see, what they are contemplating is what next. That is what we have to keep them guessing. They are expecting, they also know that this is not enough. We are going to come with more diplomatic, more economic offensives, and of course, a military response. They are aware. So the meeting is basically to try to outguess us what they are going to do and what they can do about it. Actually, they can do pretty nothing about it except go back somewhere. And I do not think anybody, even China, may not listen to them this time.
Yes, and Brigadier Jamwal, what have you thought of the world response? We've just seen Mark Carney, the acting Prime Minister of Canada, the last G7 nation leader to finally condemn the attack. What's been your response to the world reaction to this attack?
You see, it is not only India. The whole world is appalled. That's the world. This is a horrific act just based on religion. The way it has been executed, it has been brutal to the extreme. So the response has to be brutal, and the world is listening to us. The world is listening to the India narrative. Nobody today believes what Pakistan says. When Pakistan yesterday said we do not have any role in it, nobody believes it. Nobody believes it, and that is to our advantage. It must be pushed to the fullest to isolate Pakistan diplomatically, economically, militarily, every way possible. It has to disintegrate. It is the epicenter of terrorism, not only for India, for the world. Any incident happen anywhere in the world. If Hamas had built tunnels, the engineers were from Pakistan. If Osama bin Laden was hidden somewhere, it was in Pakistan. Every terror incident in the world has its epicenter in Pakistan. So it is in interest of world peace that Pakistan disintegrates. The sooner, the better.
Yes, Brigadier Jamwal, thank you very much for joining us, and we will continue to bring you all news updates in regards to the Jammu and Kashmir situation. Let's now move on. US President Donald Trump and the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, clashed again on efforts to end the 3-year-old war in Ukraine, with the US leader rebuking Zelensky for refusing to recognize Russia's occupation of Crimea. Trump's Vice President, J.D. Vance, said it was time for Russia and Ukraine to either agree to the US's peace proposal or they should be ready to see the US walk away from this process. On the other hand, Zelensky has reiterated that Ukraine would never cede Crimea to Russia. Let's take a listen to what the President of Ukraine had to say on the Crimean talks.
Тому що як тільки ми починаємо говорити про Крим, про наші суверенні території тощо, ми заходимо в формат, якого і хоче Росія, затягування війни. Тому що швидко домовитись про все не вийде. І Україна не визнає юридично окупацію Криму. Ми маємо про що говорити. Це поза нашою Конституцією. Це наша територія. Територія народу України. Ми не можемо просто, а чому би ні? Чого не буде? Мені здається, що...
Earlier in March, Trump had argued with his Ukrainian counterpart that Crimea was lost to Russia long ago and is not even a point of discussion and is only making peace harder to achieve. Here is what the director of Russia and Eurasia program at Chatham House, James Nixey, said on the issue of Trump's view of the Russia-Ukraine peace process.
Washington could absolutely walk away from the Ukraine talks. This is a very different America to the one we saw 12 months ago, one which does not particularly care about the fate of Ukraine. As a result of that, if it doesn't get what it wants first time around, if it doesn't get to solve the problem as it claimed and boasted it could do, then it would seem to be a reasonable play for this administration not to get into the quagmire that it perceives as being the Russia.
Later in a post on X, Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his views on the London talks. He mentioned that the talks among US, Ukrainian and European officials were marked by high emotions, but also expressed hope that future might bring peace. Zelensky is now in South Africa, where he is expected to meet international leaders as the United States is trying to broker peace talks with Russia. We are joined by Quentin A. Hitchcock, American political consultant located in Washington, D.C., to discuss this further. Thank you very much, Quentin, for joining us. Quentin, once again, we're seeing the Ukrainian and the United States presidents clashing with each other. This is obviously something we've seen before. Is President Trump, Quentin, effectively pressuring Ukraine into accepting this deal that violates its sovereignty and international law?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about that. I also think it's interesting that whether it's President Trump, Vice President Vance, our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, that all in the past 72 hours have threatened to walk away from peace talks with Ukraine and Russia. What's interesting about this is, politically speaking, the president really can't afford to walk away from this deal without negotiating peace and an end to this conflict. Remember, when he was running for president for the better part of 2 years, this was one of his biggest campaign promises. A lot of people got him elected and voted for him because he was running as the candidate that was going to end conflicts overseas. So they're talking tough. I think in poker we call this a bluff. They're essentially threatening Kyiv that if they don't essentially do or agree to some of the things in the United States' proposal regarding the conflict and regarding peace talks, that the United States is just going to walk away. And politically speaking, they just cannot afford to do that. What's concerning is that Kyiv has unequivocally rejected the current proposal as it stands between Russia and Ukraine. The 2 points specifically that President Zelensky has unequivocally been against, one is Ukraine can never join NATO, which I don't think is surprising. And then 2, Crimea would be recognized as Russian territory. So those are going to be 2 very significant key points for Ukraine to deal with. But let's make no mistake, the United States is not going to be wiggling. They're not going to be flexible with those negotiations.
Yes, Quentin, obviously territorial disputes are going to be the point of contention in this, the main obstacle to achieving peace. Do you see this as a real threat that Donald Trump is threatening to walk away? Obviously, we've had a vocal statement by J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio saying that the U.S. is open to walking away if we don't see progress in the next few days. How will that look for Donald Trump if the United States does walk away, and how will it look for this war?
Well, it would be catastrophic for both. It would be catastrophic for the president, for this White House, again, who ran on the very simple premise that they were the candidates that were going to end conflict and create peace overseas. And it would be even more catastrophic for Ukraine. And frankly, not just Ukraine, but a lot of Eastern European countries and a lot of European powers like the UK, like Germany, like France, who have invested so much to see that this war ends and that Russia does not have the ability to invade a sovereign country again. So again, I see this really as a negotiating tactic. I know a lot of people out there are saying, okay, this is President Trump. When he says he can walk away from a deal, he can do it. I'm not saying he can't walk away from this. All I'm saying is that I really do believe that this is nothing more than a strong arm tactic. It's a negotiating tactic to get Ukraine to accept really a deal that they see as unequivocally unfair to Ukraine. So it'll be interesting how this plays out. I don't see any scenario how this moves forward without any kind of animosity between President Zelensky and President Trump, which has already existed for a number of months now.
Yes, Quentin, and that's what I finally want to go into, is the 2 men at the center of this, well, 3 men actually, but President Zelensky and President Donald Trump. How do you assess their relationship currently, and why hasn't Vladimir Putin been held to the same accountability as Volodymyr Zelensky has?
You know, that's a great question. It's also a very big criticism that many elected officials in this country have of President Trump, that not just in this administration, but for many years, he has really failed to meet the moment in holding President Putin accountable for a variety of different things. President Zelensky and President Trump are going to continue, in my opinion, to have conflict. Again, the current proposal that the United States has laid out is really not favorable to Ukraine. I think a lot of European leaders have agreed with that. So I don't expect that to get any better. What I will say, and what's very, very disappointing in this, and frankly, the harsh reality of this situation, is President Putin is very much listening to what President Trump is saying. You mentioned earlier in the program that just hours after President Trump went to social media to attack President Zelensky, Russia, by missile strike, has attacked two of the largest cities in Ukraine, Kharkiv and Kyiv. I think 2 people getting killed, some 50 people getting injured. So that's the real life effect of this. These are civilians, by the way. So the quicker President Zelensky and President Trump can come to some sort of agreement, the better this is going to be for all of Europe, for the region, for the rest of the world. But as we stand right here, it certainly appears to be that we are a far ways away from that happening.
Quinton A. Hitchcock, thank you very much for joining us. We stay in Europe, where at least 2 people have been killed and 54 others wounded following a missile strike on Kyiv early this morning, according to the city's mayor, Vitaly Klitschko. 38 of the injured, included 6 children, were hospitalized. Explosions were heard throughout the capital as Ukrainian authorities issued a missile attack alert. Residents rushed to bomb shelters as the city came under fire. Meanwhile, Kharkiv was also hit by 7 missiles, and the city's mayor confirmed a massive ongoing drone attack. Ukrainian officials, including President Zelensky's top aide, Andriy Yermak, have condemned these attacks on civilians, urging for an immediate halt to the violence. Let's move on now, where US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has emphasized that any deal with Iran would require the country to stop enriching uranium, limiting its nuclear program to civilian use. However, Iranian officials have made it very clear that they will not negotiate away their right to enrich uranium, calling zero enrichment unacceptable. These comments come ahead of crucial talks between the United States and Iran in Oman on Saturday. While the US aims to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear bomb, Iran insists its nuclear program is peaceful. The ongoing talks come amid growing concerns over Iran's uranium enrichment, which has been ramping up to 60% purity, close to weapons-grade levels. The US has reiterated that if Iran wants a peaceful nuclear program, it can import enriched material, as many other nations do. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also commented on the ongoing talks. Let's take a listen to his comments.
משטר האימים באיראן הוא איום לגורלו ולקיומו ולקיומה, לא רק של עתידנו, אלא לגורלם ולעתידה של החברה האנושית כולה. זה מה שיהיה אם הוא ישיג נשק גרעיני. המאבק בינינו לבין אימפריית הטרור בטהרן יחרוץ את גורלן של כל החברות החופשיות. אם ישראל תפסיד חלילה במערכה זו, מדינות המערב תהיינה הבאות בתור.
Let's move over to the African continent now, where the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels pledged in statements released after talks in Qatar to work on peace after violence escalated in January, raising fears of a wider regional war. Their agreement raises hopes that the descent into violence after the decades-long conflict rooted in the Rwandan genocide might ease. The talks come after the M23 rebel group has staged an unprecedented advance since January, seizing eastern Congo's two largest cities in an assault that has killed thousands in the region. After some time, both the Congolese government and the M23 rebel group came to the negotiating table in mid-March. Two sources in the new delegations, however, have expressed frustration over the pace of the negotiations. Each of the sides released the same statement separately after their delegations departed Qatar earlier in the week, following more discussions. The statement said both parties reaffirm their commitment to an immediate cessation of hostilities. The statement described the talks as frank and constructive, but it was unclear when another round of talks will take place. We move over to the Indo-Pacific now, where South Korean prosecutors have indicted former President Moon Jae-in for alleged bribery, a prosecution office spokesperson said on Thursday, in a case related to the appointment of his former son-in-law at a Thai airline. Moon was indicted for bribery, while former lawmaker Lee Sang-jik was indicted for bribery and a breach of trust, Jeonju District Prosecutor's Office said in a statement. The prosecution alleges that the money Moon's son-in-law received as an executive director, totaling at 5.95 million baht, or 218 million won, was irregular and constituted a bribe to the then president. Moon, Lee and their legal representatives could not immediately be reached for comment. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.